Oi, pessoal, tudo bom? A gente está aqui de novo com a University of Scotland, com a Carol. E agradecer a Carol por trazer de novo a professora Nicola. Ela é um amor, já é a terceira vez que ela dá aula mock com a gente, né? Ela vai falar um pouco sobre o ambiente de trabalho, sobre administração interna e tudo mais. Isso é bem legal. Então, eu vou passar a palavra para a professora. Carol, você quer falar alguma coisa?
Não. Vamos passar para a Nicola, para a gente começar a mock class. Vai ser bem legal, bem interessante.
Perfeito. Então, hello, Nicola. Thank you so much for being here with us again. You can start whenever you are ready to. You're muted. Okay.
Right. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Good evening. So tonight we're looking at the environment in which large organisations operate. So the aims of tonight's session are to analyse the impact of both internal and external factors on a large organisation and how they operate. To do that, we first need to consider the role of business in society. It's good to come back to that and revisit it. So businesses exist to either provide goods and or services to their customers, all right? So goods or services are provided in exchange for money. It's pretty obvious, but it's always good to revisit some of these points and keep it in mind. It helps keep us focused on what we're studying. When we're talking about goods, we say they are tangible, so you can actually see them and touch them. Things like books and clothes and jewellery and cars. But services, we describe them as being intangible. You can't touch them and they don't have a physical presence, all right? So that's something like insurance, education. So obviously you can see me, but you can't see the knowledge that I am giving you. Online services such as banking, for example, the work that doctors, dentists and waiters do. So that's the two key differences there. So then we need to focus on what are the sectors in an average economy or in a market economy. So there are three main sectors. We have what we call the private sector, the public sector and the voluntary sector. So if we look at them individually, the private sector is all about sole traders, and we'll look at these points in more detail soon. Partnerships, private limited companies, public limited companies, and franchises. I should point out that the focus here is primarily UK companies, but I'm sure there are a lot of other similar structures in many other market economies around the world. The public sector consists of the central government, local government, which is in the smaller areas, and public corporations, which provide services like water and gas. We then have a third sector, which is the voluntary sector, and that's where our charities sit, social clubs like bowling clubs and social enterprises. What are the aims of these different sectors of the economy? So the private sector, the main aim is to spot a gap in the market, all right? So look for a good or a service that's not being provided or could be provided better, and turn this idea into success, which will obviously then maximise profits, because businesses start by maximising profits. Sorry, Raimundo, I'm not sure of the point of your question. Maybe you can talk to me later. All right, thank you. So the private sector, as we said, we're looking to maximise profits. Businesses start to maximise profits. All right, the public sector, the main aims of the public sector are to provide a high quality product or service to UK citizens, whichever other country they are working in. They provide essential care such as hospitals, education, defence, which is the military, and police, and provide services that are not entirely profit driven, like things like street lighting, your roads, etc. The voluntary sector, the main
Como que eu
aims
entro
are
aqui com esse negócio da Marina?
causes.
Tem que digitar. Tá,
Onde? No Instagram?
fala, filho.
Esqueci, né?
Zoom.
Sorry? The main aims of the voluntary sector are to raise funds to support causes, for example, cancer care in the community,
Fala, filho.
and to raise
Não lembra?
awareness for worldwide issues like famine
Falei com o
in
médico agora, o S. Você tá livre aí, o teu...
Não, one minute,
Pergunta pro
fala-
papai se dá pra
Have
ir
a
na
nice
6 da
hair.
tarde.
Oi, Liliana.
Você vai tomar banho agora, Liliana? Vai entrar?
Peraí.
Liliana.
No Instagram?
Okay, let's continue, please. Sorry.
All right, so we've looked at the aims of these different sectors. Let's look at the sectors in a bit more detail. So if you're talking about the private sector, the first category we have is the sole trader, sole being solo, one person. So it's one person who owns and runs the business. All right, so it could be a private accountant, it could be someone who runs their own nail salon, for example, small local businesses. The owner gets to make all the decisions, all right, which can be a real advantage depending on how you like to work. And you can keep all the profits of the business, which is a great motivating factor. You're also responsible for all the debts of the business, obviously, because it is your own business and no one else is participating with you. They're easy to set up with minimum legal requirements, and the accounts are kept private, which means you don't need to report to anyone the amount of money that you make or the amount of tax that you make. The next type of business is a partnership, and your partnerships are between 2 and 20 people owning and running the business. Can be things like dental practices, medical practices, architects, engineers. They often go into partnership. The workloads can be shared between the partners, and the profits have to be shared according to the sharing agreement of the partnership. The partners are also responsible for the debts of the business. There is the possibility of disagreement between partners as there is with anyone at work, but as they run the business and there are no managers as such, can be a little more complicated to manage at times. With a partnership, you've got the benefit of different people bringing in different skills and knowledge to run the business, so it can make it quite a successful type of business structure. Your private limited companies, so you have private shareholders who own the company, and there's a lot of restrictions on those private shareholders and who they are. The aim, like any other business, is to maximise profits, and the owners have limited liability, so they can't lose their personal belongings. If you think back to a partnership, if there is a problem in the business and they have to close the business and sell the assets, the partners might lose their houses, cars, anything like that, because there is unlimited liability in a partnership. But in a private limited company, you can't lose all your personal possessions. So if the business goes bankrupt, you can still keep a lot of your own personal investments, which is good. The shareholders appoint directors to run the company on their behalf, and the final accounts must be prepared and made available to interested parties, but they don't need to be published on the stock exchange, so there's quite an element of privacy still. Usually a family-owned business. One of the well-known examples in the UK is Richard Branson, You may have heard of Richard Branson. He's quite a famous entrepreneur and he owns the Virgin brand. So you may be familiar with Virgin Airlines or Virgin Mobile. So that is actually a private limited company. Another type of company structure is your public limited company. Okay, so there is no control who buys shares. Members of the public can buy shares. Okay, so it's listed on the stock exchange and all financial information about the company is available to anyone who would like to find that information. Obviously, it will also be on the websites of these companies. Like all other company structures, the same aim to maximize profits. And there is limited liabilities. So the shareholders of the company can only lose the value of their shares. So if you invest £1,000 worth of shares and the company goes bankrupt, you will only lose that £1,000. You're not going to lose all your assets. Public limited companies are very large organisations. And they are large organisations because the only way you can run a large organisation is being a public limited company. You need a lot of money to run these corporations, so you have to list them on the stock exchange. The name of the company ends in PLC, and as we said earlier, all financial records must be available to all members. All right. The last type of organisation in the private sector that we want to consider is your franchise. I'm not sure of the franchises that you would have in Brazil, but a typical one would be Pizza Hut or Domino's or McDonald's. I'm sure you've heard of all of those. It can be very costly to buy a successful franchise simply because it is successful and you will make a lot of money from it. So you need to invest a lot of money to buy that. The franchisor, which is the company, the parent company that manages these franchises, provides support and training so that you get the same product, the same service, no matter whether you go to the franchise in Brazil or the one in the UK. It's all going to look, sound, smell, and feel the same. You've got that consistency in brand. If you buy a franchise, you pay a fee to the franchisor, that is like the parent company. And therefore you have to use the franchise logo, colours, and store layout. That's one of the non-negotiable conditions when you buy into a franchise, but you're buying into a successful brand. It's less risky to set up in business if you're buying into a successful business like that, and that is why many people do that if they have the money. Again, profit maximisation, okay? All businesses in the private sector start for the aim of profit maximisation. The next type of sector that we're going to look at is the public sector, all right? So that can be what we call local government. So that doesn't cover the whole country or the whole city, it's just small areas in a city. They might be involved with education, social work, which is supporting families and communities, transport, local bus services, for example. Housing, allocation of housing. So the UK has quite an extensive public housing system for those who can't afford their own housing. Homeless provision, so they'll provide services for homeless people, rent collection for these services, and building new council houses. So local government is also called local council, and they build the houses for those who are not able to afford to buy a house. Can be environmental services provided by the local government, so that's your refuse or your rubbish collection, street lights, and food safety. All the local businesses, they will go and check that they are complying to health and safety standards so that no one gets food poisoning from going to the different cafes and restaurants. The finance comes from council tax and business rates. So if you live in the area, you pay money to the council in the form of a tax, or if you're a business, you would also pay rates for the business. You would pay money to be a business owner in one of those areas. We also need to consider the voluntary sector. It can be quite large in many economies. We call it not-for-profit organisations. So usually they don't pay taxes and they are regulated by the government. They get their money from donations from individuals like you and I, from government grants, from lottery grants, and profits from charity shops. So people might sell secondhand clothing. You'll also get a lot of businesses contributing to charities. They might get tax breaks for doing it. And it's also part of their corporate social responsibility. These not-for-profit organisations are set up to alleviate poverty in local areas, or maybe to fund overseas projects, to fund medical research, and to provide protection to the vulnerable. And while they're called not-for-profit organisations, they actually do need to make a profit, okay? But the profit is not distributed to shareholders. The profit is kept within the organisation so that it can be used for its services. So they do need to make a profit, because if they make a loss, then they can't continue their business. It's just handled differently. All right, so there are also other non-for-profit organisations which are voluntary organisations, and they are run and staffed by volunteers. A volunteer will not get any money for the work that they do. They raise finance by applying for lottery grants, or local authorities give them the money, and they charge people to become a member. Some of these can be local community groups like scouts, youth clubs, sports clubs like your local cricket or football club, and the Brownies, which is an organisation for the young girls in the neighbourhood. There are also social enterprises, so they might have a clear environmental mission, be independent from government intervention, or be accountable and transparent and reinvest profits into the mission. They could be financed by grants, which is money that the government gives them, loans, or equity finance. And there's been a very popular TV program in the UK called Dragon's Den, and that's all about giving money to individuals to run a business. Some of the examples for social enterprises include The Big Issue, and that is a small newspaper or magazine that people who don't have any work will sell on the streets to get some money to earn an income. It's quite successful, and the idea has been copied in many countries around the world. You'll often see these people outside train stations selling this magazine or newspaper. One of the other more well-known projects in the UK is the Eden Project, and I have a short video about the Eden Project. It's an environmental program in the UK. It's very interesting. I hope you'll enjoy the video. It's only a few minutes.
We wanted Eden to be the best classroom in the world. That is to say, we wanted it to be a place where you would learn effortlessly because you didn't even think it was a classroom. It is a provocation to see things afresh. And by doing that, you rediscover your curiosity, and you then want to follow the train of thought and actually learn and learn and learn. It's for school children, yes, but it's for captains of industry. It's for rock stars, it's for students, it's for apprentices, it's for everybody. Eden is going out onto a world stage, I think, because many people have looked at the message that's coming out of Eden and have rather liked the fact that it's not about politics, it's about how lots of people chaining themselves together in hope can transform things. And that is why I think we're building in China, we're building, we hope, in India. We're hoping to actually have an Eden in every single continent of the world, barring Antarctica. To act as, if you like, a little flag in the sand, so the people of those countries can write their own narrative about how they're going to take their future in their own hands. Because actually the message of Eden is that the future remains ours to make. The Eden that you see all around you, the geography of Eden, is about bringing a whole load of people together to make something better, something that was derelict. The big lunch, if you like, is the social extension of that. We wanted to go into communities and give them the opportunity or the excuse to have an event that would create moments that would make their neighbourhood feel better, or in some cases even create a neighbourhood that was not actually there because people weren't speaking to each other. So it's making it better. Eden, put simply, is an attitude. It is that if good people come together at one point, you can take something that is apparently hopeless and transform it into something that is full of hope. And in so doing, you excite people all over the place to go and do their own version of things that are hopeful. So I guess we're a catalyst. I really believe in people. You scratch the surface, and underneath us, I would reckon 99% of the whole population of this beautiful planet of ours is good.
All right, we will stop that there. I think that's a nice introduction to a very interesting voluntary organisation that provides a lot of services and benefits to a community. So in terms of analysing the internal and external factors on an organisation, which is where we started tonight's lecture, we look at the different areas of a business to find out what's going on. So the main areas that we focus on for internal factors are finance, staff, management, information, and technology. All right, so finance, obviously extremely important. Without cash flow, a business needs to consider cost-cutting measures. So changes in the costs of a business, such as raw materials or wages, could reduce the profit an organisation can make. Obviously, at the moment, with all the chaos happening in the Ukraine, that is affecting the price of gas and electricity here in the Northern Hemisphere. So that is impacting on organisations quite a bit, all right? So these are changes of the cost. It affects how the business can run. Staff and management, all right? So if we have trained staff, they're going to be more productive. They'll do more for an organisation in achieving profits. So staff development is crucial to a business if it wants to grow. So a business needs to assess what training the staff need and ensure that they have the right programs in place. We also need capable management. They need to make good decisions to allow the business to be a success. And the management team needs to have a clear understanding of the business and the direction the business wants to take. So you need to recruit the right people at the right time. That was one of our earlier lectures, which you may have seen. Information, all right? So communication within an organisation is key to the organisation being a success. All right, so your decisions that are made by the senior managers have to be communicated through the organisation, so every staff member is aware of what is required from them and the mission of the organisation. So you need communication from the top managers right down to the front of house staff like the receptionist. If everyone is in the loop, as they say, if people understand what's happening in a business, they will be more motivated to work in the business. All right, so it requires open communication between managers and staff at all levels of the organisation. We also need information about our customers. All right, we need to know the customers that we have and the customers that we are trying to attract, and also the customers that we lost and why we lost them. All right, we need to understand what our customers want and need, and this information needs to be accurate and up to date and is obtained through market research. Because if we don't know what our customers want and need, quite clearly, we're not going to be providing the right products and services for our customers. And therefore, we're not going to be making the money that we went into business to make. We also need to consider technology, all right? So information communication technology allows goods and services to be communicated more effectively and efficiently within the organisation. We want automated systems because they are going to be more efficient and cost effective, and robots can produce more goods at a higher standard, thereby increasing profits. So having the right technology in an organisation is also critical to increasing and maximising profits. How do we analyse the impacts of external factors on an organisation? So we've just looked at the different internal factors affecting an organisation. What are the external factors that we need to look at? We use a type of analysis called a PESTEC, and as you can see, PESTEC stands for political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and competitive factors. All right, so our political factors, this is what the government will impose on an economy and therefore the business. So the government might introduce new legislation that could affect the business, and the business has no option but to adhere to or stick to these laws. All right, so it could be new health and safety policies. The UK is quite a regulated economy, and if there are new policies regarding how many people can work in a particular environment, different rules about safety, things like equality, so equality between different genders, the male and the female. You might also consider old people, they would also be given the same opportunities to work. Other things that can be included in political factors are your data protection legislation. The government can also change tax rates, and that's corporation tax. Okay, so if the tax rates increase, do you want to stay in that country and continue providing goods and services? Where do you want your headquarters to be? How are you going to pay tax? Or minimum wage rates that an organisation needs to pay, which will affect profits. So the government will tell a business what is the minimum amount that it must pay its staff, and the business has no choice. All right, they might decide to pay cash in hand, but they run the risk of being investigated and fined for doing that. All right, so if you set a minimum wage rate and it's higher than what the business has been paying before, that's obviously going to affect profits. Elections, which is when you might have a change of government, can slow down an economy as organisations are going to wait to see who will govern. If it's the political party that's in opposition that gets in, it's going to change the way it runs an economy. So people often wait until this is done. There are also things like global alliances and wars. I think that's something we see a lot in the media. Which countries does China work with, for example? And I'm not singling out any economy. The Ukraine and Russia, which economies aligned with the Ukraine, which economies aligned with Russia? They all have major impacts on how an economy runs and how a business can run resulting from that. Economic factors, all right? So we need to consider the different economic factors. When there is a recession, consumers are less likely to spend money on goods and services, and that means company profits may reduce. So a recession means that the economy has stopped growing. It is actually getting smaller, all right? There are predictions that we will go into a recession sometime this year or maybe next year, given all the crises in the world and the knock-on effects from the pandemic. During a recession, there can be high unemployment, so there'll be less sales made in shops as consumer household income reduces, all right? So household income reduces, maybe because prices rise, people lose their jobs, or maybe people are worried that there's going to be a recession, so they stop spending, which can in turn actually bring on this recession. There'll be changes in the stock market, consumer confidence and interest rates, and these all affect what consumers spend. So therefore, it's going to affect what happens in your business. It also might affect the inflation rate. Sorry, that shouldn't say inflation's rate. It should just say inflation rate. So the inflation rate is prices rising in the economy. You don't want prices rising too fast. Otherwise, goods and services get more expensive. And I was reading today that one of the major economies, I think it was the French economy, the inflation rate is now 7%. Okay, so inflation, I think in the UK is tipped to get even higher, especially for goods and services like the electricity and the gas products this year, again, as a result of the war in the Ukraine. So all of these economic factors are going to affect households and businesses and how much money people will be able to spend. We need to consider social factors. They will impact organisations. So as the population changes, business must adapt to consumer needs. So people are living longer now, and the elderly are now making up a larger portion of the population. Grey power, they call it. So businesses must adapt their goods and services to meet this changing population. All right, and if you've got more and more older people in the community, maybe you need to consider different types of housing. Is that being organised and planned for? There are different attitudes around working conditions post-pandemic. All right, so depending on where you lived and which business or organisation you worked for, you may have been working at home for the pandemic. I know we teachers taught online for most of the pandemic and lockdown, and you will find that now people are expecting to not go to the office all the time to work. They would much rather work from home because they don't have the long commute to the office. They save money on public transport. However, also some miss the social factor that work gives you. And consumer beliefs about different products and services, that also affects how a business is going to run. Technological factors, okay, so they are also external impacts. So you need to consider what changes have occurred in your customers' use of technology, and businesses need to keep up to date with changes in technology to succeed. Not keeping up with changing technologies can result in a business not targeting certain consumers, all right? So you might not sell on the internet as much as you should. You don't use social media. Production lines should be using some form of automation or robots to increase productivity and sales. If you don't engage with technology, your organisation can miss out on sales and profits by not meeting customer demands. You also need to take into account cybersecurity. Is your business safe from being hacked and your information stolen? Your information about how you run your business is your competitive advantage over other businesses. So you really do want to protect that. All right, competitive factors. So businesses face competition from other businesses within the UK and abroad. abroad. So businesses must ensure that they are keeping up with their competitors in order to keep their share of the market. So you want to know what your competitors are doing, all right? So you want to know, are they updating their products in response to consumer demand? Are they discontinuing products? You need to be fully aware of what's happening in the market so that you too can provide the right goods and services at the same time. If you don't do this, you will lose sales, and if you lose sales, you are therefore going to lose profits. You can gather this information either through market research, which you commission, or you can buy readily available market research that has been done. All right, now some people also carry out a PESTLE analysis. As you can see, the PESTLE is very similar to the PESTEC, but we look at legal issues and environmental issues, okay? So the political, economic, social and technological stays the same. So let's look at a PESTLE analysis. So the legal factors. There might be changes in legislation impacting access to materials, quotas, resources, imports, exports, and taxation, all right? So impacting access to materials. Are you buying materials or raw items for your production that have been sustainably produced or ethically produced? All right, so you might be a business that wants to buy fair trade products. Obviously, there are going to be a lot of legal issues around that. Quotas, all right, so quotas are all about protecting industries. How much can you import from another country? How much should you be buying of locally made goods and services? And these are all governed by the laws of the country, all right? Imports and exports and taxation. You need to follow closely all the taxation changes. There will also be employment and consumer protection laws. So in the UK, we have a lot of employment legislation that protects the employees. It protects the employees from the business owners who treat their employees unfairly, who do not pay them the correct wages, who do not pay them on time, or who may not pay them at all. There were many examples of that during the pandemic. All right, so a business, if it wants to be successful and stick within the law, needs to keep up to date with all of these. There are also consumer protection laws, all right? So consumers are protected from buying faulty goods or services that are not what they say they're going to be. All right, so there will be legislation regarding how long you can have a product for, how long the guarantee is going to be for that product before the guarantee runs out. So we protect our consumers from business owners who are not ethical, or that rare occasion when you buy a product, for example, like a fridge or a TV that just doesn't work, you can get your money back. So it is a great belief that we protect our consumers. All right, Equality Act in terms of who we can recruit and work in a business. And we've also got the General Data Protection Regulation Act. So there is a lot of protection of people's personal data, and a lot of businesses were requesting people sign authorizations that we were happy to give them our personal data before they ran their business. Environmental factors, all right, so these can really impact on an organization. So in extreme weather conditions, such as floods or snow, businesses can be adversely affected if they cannot respond to changing weather conditions. So they might not be able to sell the products to the customers, or the goods cannot be delivered, and businesses need to have contingencies or plans in place to cover these losses. All right. Also in countries like, for example, in Australia, where I'm from, lots of floods, okay? So people are losing their homes regularly. Businesses cannot be run because they are regularly being flooded, and their goods and services that they would normally sell cannot be provided. Okay, so that's having a great impact on economies. Also, we are struggling with drought and heat. That also impacts on an economy, all right? There's also a lot of pressure on businesses to be environmentally friendly or to go green, to work sustainably, all right? So not to exploit and use too many environmental resources. So you might find that a lot of supermarkets are now not giving you a plastic bag to take your shopping home, and you might be expected to buy a bag that you can reuse again and again and again. Another thing that's happening at the moment is a reduction in the use of single plastics like drinking straws. People are now not giving straws or handing out paper straws so that the plastic doesn't go into the ocean. And businesses are also measuring their carbon footprint. What are their carbon emissions? And to finish tonight's lecture, we're going to look at a short video produced by McKinsey. You may know the name McKinsey. They are a management consulting firm, and they often produce videos and provide information about how to run businesses. This is all about sustainability. Sustainability is the buzzword nowadays. How do we run our resources? How do we run our businesses without exploiting all the resources? Let's have a look at this video.
I don't think we've scratched the surface of what we're capable of. I think we're just on the start of a journey.
Oops. Sorry, I'll just get that video ready. So we're looking at how 3 leading companies are tackling sustainability in the next normal. So this video was produced in 2020 during the time of the pandemic. All right, so the video has been produced by one of the senior partners and looks at the importance of addressing environmental sustainability. I hope you find it interesting.
This next normal is critical.
There is not a trade-off between economic prosperity, social justice, and environmental sustainability.
What is sustainability if it is not also the ability to endure?
Protecting lives and livelihoods from the global pandemic and resulting economic crisis is clearly our #1 priority. But the world still needs to pay attention to climate change and the broader sustainability agenda. Our research shows that if we fail to adapt and dramatically reduce emissions, hundreds of millions of lives, trillions of dollars of economic activity, and the world's physical and natural capital may all be at risk. The great news is smart investment in climate resilience and a lower carbon future is cost effective. We found that the average utility company could save nearly $1 billion over 20 years by investing now in its grid infrastructure and in distributed energy solutions. In another sector, retail, Walmart is a leader with a history of introducing ambitious sustainability targets while also engaging its local communities in building back together.
At Walmart, we're working in 4 areas specifically: climate, nature, waste, and people. We're also working in our supply chain in a project that we call Project Gigaton. And that project aims to take out a gigaton of emissions by 2030 from product supply chains. We spend about $1.4 billion a year in philanthropy. About $1 billion of that is donated product, which is both part of our drive to eliminate waste and also to address things like food security. The advice I would have for companies that are faced with short-term trade-offs between addressing the pandemic and making progress in sustainability is to focus on the things in the near term and build the capacity and innovate to tackle some of the more challenging things that you know are going to create value in the long term.
Food and beverage company Danone is at the forefront of transitioning the economy by building a sustainable future for each of its product lines.
Danone has been running what was called a dual economic and social agenda for the last 50 years. Sustainability is not new in this company. There will not be agriculture tomorrow if there is no way that we can address climate change properly. If there is no agriculture, there will not be food. There won't be brands, there won't be Danone. It's as simple as that. We started to measure, including the product by product CO2 footprint. And we incentivized 15,000 managers, team leaders at Danone with not only economic bonus, but CO2 related bonus 10 years ago. We need cross-company work, coalitions of companies addressing systematically and collectively some of these topics that we are just not able to address ourselves. More than ever, we are entering into a time, a world, where we have no time to lose. We have set a vision, one planet, one health, which means that the health of the planet and the health of people are interconnected. You will not solve one without solving the other.
Tackling climate change won't be easy, but it is essential to deliver the prize of a more prosperous, equitable, resilient, and sustainable world.
All right, thank you. That is the end of tonight's lecture. I hope you found it interesting.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nicola. Do you guys have any questions? Let's open for questions. Usually students like to make questions for you, so.
Keep them in.
I don't know, sometimes they're shy.
So that's just one of the many subject areas that we cover on our business courses.
Well, I guess that's it. Nobody has any questions. So thank you so much, Professor Nicola, and I see you again, right?
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you, Nicola, one more
Thank
time.
Yeah.
Thank
Can't
you.
Thank you
wait.
for coming, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. See you in your next mock class. Bye. Bye.